I got to talk about a few things about how badly screwed we are. I usually prefer white pills or gray pills or at least clown pills to black pills, but here's the black pill, okay? First, we got to talk a little bit about how literally another Democrat com- did literal, actual, like, execution by firing squad treason. It came out in a report that like Democrats are gleefully reporting like it's a good thing that just because of that January 6th thing that literally nobody sane cares about because literally nothing happened except for one cop had a stroke a week afterwards. One person was trampled in a stampede because one cop shot an unarmed protester who wasn't doing anything. Anyway, because of that stupid riot, which you can see I'm on the record at the time. I was never defending it. I called it a trap because it was a trap because you can see on the video there's like no cops there. Now keep in mind after this event happened, the National Guard literally walled off the fucking Capitol and turned it into a fucking fortress the next day, despite all the Democrats and all the politicians knowing that all these protesters were coming because they evacuated a session before they were even there. All the cops present, all like fucking three of them, let the protesters in. It's all on video. It was a trap. Republicans fell for it, and it was used to call us all terrorists. Meanwhile, another thing that happened on the back of that event that it should scare the shit out of you is General Miley, a general, one of the top guys in charge of our military in the entire United States, literally called a general in China and said, I know it looks like our president is crazy, but I'm just going to tell you man to man that I've made sure to remove the nuclear capability of the president and basically completely stall out our entire nuclear program. Nothing's going to happen to you, China. China being one of our foremost military enemies, and we spend more time with NATO trying to fend off China from shit around the sea around China and fend off North Korea, who's the closest Chinese proxy. Basically, anything we do against North Korea is an activity against China because North Korea has nothing except Chinese backing. Literally nothing. They can't do shit except for be backed by China. All that's going on, and NATO does more about China than it does about Russia because Russia's done nothing but threaten to take more Ukrainian territory, and who cares? And who cares? Most Ukrainians in those territories want to be reabsorbed into Russia, which is why it keeps happening. And there's nothing we can do about it, and there's nothing we are doing about it because we're worrying about China. Meanwhile, our general tells China, if you were to shoot all the fucking nukes you have, more than we have at the moment, at us, there would be nothing the President of the United States can do about it for the next 2 weeks. We are naked and defenseless, he told China, which China could tell anybody else who's nuclear capable, and they could shoot at us. They could have told Russia. They could have told fucking India or some shit, or fucking Pakistan's nuclear capable. Dude, there's a bunch of nuclear submarines all over the place that various people have that could started shooting at the American seaboard, and nobody could have done a fucking thing about it. Because all Democrats are traitors. And it's not an exaggeration. It's not, oh, they go against the values I think are best for this country. No, they are actively, deliberately, explicitly telling you and trying to destroy this nation. And they are coming very fucking close to getting everybody fucking killed. On purpose. So even though I'm much more, when it comes to global politics, trying to stress that almost everything that's gone on, all the deaths that have gone on in Afghanistan and Iraq, and are likely to continue at some point very soon in Iran, and are still going on all along the Middle East, is because America is the greatest nation in the world with the greatest military in the world. However, America does not act in its own interests. Because of our broken political system, much like North Korea is a proxy for China, America is a proxy for Israel. Israel owns this country completely. However, what's really eerie is China also appears to own this country, but it's not shown in the control of the financial system or in control of the media system, be it social, news, print, radio, all of the above is controlled by Israeli dual citizens. But but what's weird is all our foreign policy seems to be repeatedly leaning towards helping China. And China has started raising all its nuclear capabilities and raising its military shit and starting doing more testing and shit. And in response, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan have all started doing the same. And there may be an Asian theater world war coming. Meanwhile, we have generals who, on the news and the right wing, you're being told repeatedly, worry about them because they're woke and putting a bunch of transgender people and gay people and women into the military, which is bad. But that's not what the problem is. The problem is they are collaborating with our enemies, not just foreign nations in the interest of those foreign nations instead of our interest. They're collaborating with our enemies. And yes, it is true that Hunter Biden is a pipeline through which illegal funds from foreign powers are getting into the DNC and Joe Biden's coffers. Okay, it's the same thing that the Clintons have done with the Clinton Foundation. So let's look at the past several times we've been dealing with Democrats and why it's completely, utterly insane for anybody to think that Democrats should be running the country. First of all, we've had a major economic crash under the last two Democrat presidents. Worst since 1930s type shit. Both times under their policies. This is by design. They've been looking to weaken and destroy the middle class. Now, something before I want to continue too much into that kind of shit, I want to remind you that even though they say the parties flipped over Jim Crow, that did not happen. Where the parties did flip very recently, within the past 15 years, is over corporatism. The Democrats were, in the sort of Jon Stewart Daily Show era, extremely anti-corporate. And a lot of them still message anti-corporate now, despite the fact that they are 100% pro-corporate robber baron type fucking technocrats. Okay, and they're glad that the government has violated every single measure of the Constitution. The reason why you have no rights is because the government has openly, on paper, on record, collaborated with social media to use social media to do what law enforcement can't. They can censor you. They can obtain your private data. They can spy on you through your smart devices. They can violate your rights to search and seizure of everything you own. And they can violate your rights to freedom of speech and even use the surveillance in order to strip guns away from you illegally, and which is why we've had tons of Supreme Court cases about guns over and over and over again, because the government has been trying to do everything it can to destroy the Second Amendment. Now, have we had any of those cases about the First Amendment? No, because guns aren't about money. They're about the government being scared of us. But that's always been second to the concern of money. And their collusion with social media has been massively financially successful. And that's why you don't see any lawsuits getting anywhere about free speech. Because they fucking won't. Because anything that attacks the bottom line is more scary to a bullet than to a Democrat, no matter what they say. They only care about money. And part of the reason why all this woke thing has happened, believe it or not, is in direct response to Occupy Wall Street, which is where, for the first time, Republicans, Democrats, Tea Partiers, and progressives walked hand in hand into New York, into Times Square, and into fucking Central Park and said, "Fuck you people, we see what you're doing." And so immediately all the corporate people knew they had to immediately put a stop to this, because the way that the evil people win, the way the rootless international clique wins, the way the big bankers win, the way the corporate bigwigs win, and the fascist tyrants in the government win simultaneously is by keeping a split on wedge issues. And they just saw a unanimous fuck you come out of America for the first time in 70 years. And that was terrifying. This woke thing has been entirely manufactured, and it did come in on Russian communist type shit in the 70s and 80s, but it was repurposed unilaterally in order to immediately section off the left and shove them as far away from the right and the center as they possibly could. Because to have the country united in an anti-corporate message had to be stopped. That was the most dangerous thing that the evil powers that be have ever seen in 100 years. That was fucking terrifying to them. Occupy Wall Street was the scariest thing they ever did, which is why they illegally broke up all that shit and ran around macing people, and we all forgot about that. That they ran around beating hipsters and dudes in suits and ties, and anybody who was out there, and believe me, every cross-section of America, black, white, rich, poor, everyone was out there. And they all got maced, and they all got beaten, and you all forgot about it. And they had to chase them out of there, even though that was completely illegal, because that was the most, Occupy Wall Street was the most dangerous thing that ever happened to the elites. Ever. And that is why gay this, transgender that, lesbian and queer this, and pro-pedophilia that, and all this crazy shit, and this otherkin, and you can have 1,000 pronouns. All that happened because, first of all, liberals are incredibly low information. They operate 100% on emotion. You can spook and scare a liberal about anything. You can terrify them over random nonsense. You can completely make shit up and throw it at them, and they will freak the fuck out and panic for you. Easily. So they took this thing that is pointless, meaningless, useful, and does nothing for no one. Nobody fucking cares about pronouns or sexualities. These don't make money. They don't help anybody. They don't protect any civil liberties. They do nothing. And they also were a perfectly great vehicle for censorship. Now, no matter what you've said about banking or foreign policies or what countries actually control this country and the conspiracy theories about that, believe it or not, they pretend that they don't shut people down for that. But holy crap if you say the N-word. Holy crap if you say a slur about transgender people. Holy crap if you said anything that I've already said, that this whole channel is balanced on a knife edge and will eventually tip off, and this channel will be deleted, I guarantee you. Even though I've walked back some of my rhetoric, I've not stopped saying Israel owns this country, and people who have dual citizenship with Israel are exempt from the law. And those people, everyone from Chuck Schumer to Mark Zuckerberg, to Susan Wojcicki, to fucking everyone who runs Goldman Sachs and all the fucking hedge funds and shit. This is why it's important to not forget the Gamestop thing that happened last year, because that was the closest thing that they've ever seen to Occupy Wall Street, and in fact was more dangerous. I should talk about this Gamestop thing before we're done. That shut down, I think, more than 3 hedge funds and cost upwards of $10 billion to the fake and gay debt selling and debt betting system that we have. The whole short selling thing. Watch The Big Short. Watch these fucking movies. They will teach you that our financial system is not an actual system. It's a casino where the rich play roulette with each other, but they protect each other from having the bottom completely fall out on a loser due to insider trading. It's all fake. It's all a game, and it's so the rich get richer and not so the poor get poorer. They've made sure that the poor won't starve and the poor won't go without a home, and they'll violate eviction moratorium type shit that the Supreme Court ruled on to make sure that the bottom doesn't fall out on the rich, because they don't want, or excuse me, on the poor. They don't want to make sure that the poor is never so hungry that they will eat the rich. They are making sure the poor does not get poorer in this country. That is a fucking lie. The rich do get richer, but what's happening that is most dangerous, that is going to completely destroy this nation, is that the middle class has all but evaporated. Look at the middle class in 1955, look at the middle class in 1985, and then look at the middle class in 2015, and tell me you're not completely fucked. The enemy of the rich is not the poor. The poor is a weapon and a proxy of the rich. And the poor are so fucking stupid and uneducated and misled and confused in this country that they will serve the bourgeoisie and the aristocracy in a heartbeat before they protect the buffer that actually protects them from the rich, which is the middle class. The middle class that drives the economy and prevents crashes, the reason why we're all boom and bust, is not because we need a social safety net or anything. It's because the government needs to stop colluding with the rich to destroy the middle class. That is what is happening. That is what's happening. And for a couple of seconds here and there, Gamestonks, Occupy Wall Street, some shit that was going on with the petrodollar in the 80s, every once in a while the middle class wakes up from its fever dream for just a second and realizes who's holding the knife over their neck while they're asleep in bed. And they start to do something, and then the chloroform goes right back over their face, and down they go. And while all the rows and rows of middle class people are asleep, there's a bunch of Israeli bankers and social media fat cats and multimedia conglomerates that serve nations other than the United States, and a bunch of politicians who are paid off by Pakistan and paid off by the United Arab Emirates and paid off by Saudi Arabia and paid off by Israel and paid off by China and paid off by Russia and paid off by the European Union, stabbing individual people in the neck, killing them in their sleep. Metaphorically, okay? But that's what's happening. And the second that you realize this, you will understand who the real enemy is. You'll understand why they keep calling everyone a Nazi, because we have this American mythos that is about a European war. And Nazism never fucking affected America. Nothing we've ever done has had anything to do with Nazism, but it's had everything to do with the chief enemies of the Nazis. The people of the Nazis went out of their way to try to stop and destroy and defund and weaken and take away their stranglehold on the entire world, which they had in 1930 as much as they have now. This is Weimar Germany that you live in. And you're going to start realizing why the Nazis were so very popular. Because they had identified the wealthy elite that were destroying their nation. Now, I'm not saying I agree with the measures they took to put a stop to that, but there's a reason why you're being called a Nazi over and over and over again. It's not because you're a white supremacist. Nobody's afraid of the KKK, no matter how much they say they are. Nobody's really scared of white supremacists, no matter how much they say they are. They hired a bunch of ethnic minorities, a bunch of rich Israeli bankers hired a bunch of ethnic minorities to tell you that they're scared of white people. Those ethnic minorities are not scared of white people. That's also a myth. The thing is, the rich international elite from the Middle East are scared of white people. And white people, what's hilarious is they're acting like we're all up in arms about to do anything about anything. And we're not. There is no great looming threat of white supremacy. There is no pro-white middle class party like the Nazis. There is no National Socialist white middle class backed party coming up here to do anything. No matter what they tell you, no matter the fact that white middle class people are the largest voting body in this fucking country, they have split them away from each other. There are progressive white voting middle classes and conservative, and even some that have some interest in fascism and some interest in white supremacy. And there's some that are pro-business or anti-business. There's some that are pro-corporate or anti-corporate, pro-war and anti-war. They have done everything to completely atomize and balkanize the white working class. And yet, there is no one they're more afraid of, and no one they're more determined to demonize, and there is no voting public, they're not more determined to completely erase the voting power up to the point of voter fraud of. There's nobody they want to disarm, weaken, and be left vulnerable, and there's no one they want to die more than you. And they're doing everything from ethnic replacement to fucking insider trading to sending you to war to die. If you go look at the fucking draft lists that were supposedly random in Vietnam and in fucking World War II, and look who they sent off to die. Look who they sent off to die. Look who they had to literally genocide by manufacturing a war and making a meat grinder to put you into, the white working class. They are terrified of you. And the second you pretend that that's not what this is about is the second you lose. Period. This is a racial thing. You are at war, no matter how badly you don't want to be and want to pretend you're not, and no matter how many times anybody calls you crazy or calls you a Nazi or calls you a white supremacist or calls you KKK this, KKK that. Keep in mind, everybody is allowed to defend themselves but you. Everybody's allowed to fight, kill, and die and riot and shit but you. You're not allowed to defend yourself. White working class. You are the enemy of the state. And if you do not unite, and we'll have to make up our mind about what we really care about as a voting public, but until we are a united voting public that goes one way, we're all dead. That's the big black pill. And there are plenty of white working class people who want to die. They're all over Europe. You've seen them. Refugees welcome. They're trying to die. So we are almost certainly screwed. Okay? And again, I'm not telling you to do anything violent. I'm not telling you to do anything in terms of like forming a militia or some stupid shit, but there's no shortage of people who are saying exactly that's the only way. All I'm telling you is to be aware that you are the enemy of the global state. You are the enemy. There is no one they're more afraid of than you. There's no one they're trying to erase faster through every means, financial, social, cultural, and with actual violence than you. If you're white and in the military, leave. If you're white and a police officer, leave. If you're white and you're working for some sort of ethnic organization or some kind of refugee organization, stop. Law enforcement is against you. The military is against you. The government is against you. The bankers are against you. The corporations, the news media, the social media tech giants. Everybody wants you to die. And if you don't want to die, you're going to have to start making friends, and you will even have to start talking to progressives, and you'll have to start talking to communists, and you'll have to start talking to religious neocons who thinks we're in the end times, and you're going to have to start talking to corporate bigwigs and libertarians. You're going to have to start talking to ANCAPs and anarcho-communists, and you're all going to have to start making up your mind about what to do, that the fact that no matter which one of all these, from extremists to the most normie centrists, the crosshair is on every last one of you all across the political spectrum. It doesn't matter what political side you take up. This is about race. And there's one thing they want you to never ever say. The fact that this is about race. You are in an ethnic conflict. And it doesn't matter which one of these fake two-dimensional, the whole thing, the whole two-dimensional political compass, no matter if you say right or left wing, or do the quadrant thing and add the second dimension. There is a third dimension. And you've seen all the libtards do it. That's what's confusing you. Why are the progressives doing it and the libtards doing it? What is this third dimension? This sexuality and race thing. Why? And the conservatives say don't talk about race, and the neoliberals are saying don't talk about race. But the thing is, you're not in a two-dimensional plane. You're in a three-dimensional plane. You're in a three-dimensional conflict. And that z-axis, that third dimension, is race. Period. Doesn't matter how you feel about it. Doesn't matter if you like it or you love it or you hate it or it grosses you out and you want to shy away from it because you're afraid from it because you've been trained your whole life to never care about race, to never defend yourself based on race. Black power, says the black person. And yada yada. And at the end it says white power, says the racist, says the Nazi. You can't defend yourself. This is by design. This is by design. I'm not asking you to hate other ethnicities. I'm asking you to defend your own. I repeat, I am not asking you to hate or otherize or demonize or dehumanize other ethnicities. I'm asking you to defend your own. You are under attack right now.